Hi everybody, this is Agnes from Sediment, and today we are going to discuss a very sensitive topic, trophy wines versus insider's pick. And to make things even more interesting, I'm going to taste one of each blind. Is wine simply fermented grape juice that gives us buzz? Or does it, in fact, reflect the culture of where it is grown? Does it reflect the values, the egos, and even insecurities of those who drink it? I sure think so. There are people, and I have had my fair share of heated conversations with them here on my very own YouTube channel, who are obsessed with what insiders or wine professionals drink. Some will have very strong opinions that all the big names and loud labels are just bad, mass-produced wines, and that they do not truly represent a wine region, appellation, grape variety, or style. There is this strange obsession of the idea that I am the true fan of a certain wine region, rock band, or a film, and therefore only I know exactly what it should taste like, sound like, or be edited like. And anyone who dares to say otherwise or offers a different opinion is simply less educated or less knowledgeable on that topic than me. That is another form of snobbery in the wine world, and I want to avoid that today. That is definitely not my aim. Yes, it is true that I spend more time thinking, reading, listening, and discussing wine than the average person. I also probably spend more time tasting it, and naturally that means that I am exposed to more information. It is part of my job to stay informed, to read, to taste, and know what is happening in the industry. But that does not mean that wine professionals don't enjoy the great established labels or that we are only secretly sipping some obscure labels. In reality, we are explorers. We enjoy the well-known, iconic wines given the chance we can afford them, or when we are lucky enough to have a bottle shared with us. And we are also excited to taste and discover new wines, up-and-coming stars, young generation winemakers, and grapes or regions we have never heard before. Of course, we are human, we have our own preferences just as with film or music. And saying that, I just want to ask a question. Who do you think you are to say that Tuscany, Bordeaux, Champagne, or whatever should look like, taste like, or smell like? Maybe we should leave that to the grape growers and winemakers. That said, there are also people who are simply not willing to look beyond the label. They love those big names for few reasons probably. Maybe it is because when they order them at a restaurant or post a photo on Instagram with a Rolex on it, everyone instantly knows how expensive and rare that bottle is. And here is the sad part. Even if they were offered something equally exciting and high in quality, something that general public does not know about, they would not even consider it. If no one talks about it, it does not exist. And let's be honest, that bottle of Dom Perignon or Sassicaia was not bought for the flavor, but for the name. These people enjoy labels, not the pleasure of flavors. But saying that, it does not mean that these recognizable, prestigious wines are bad or lacking in character. They are great, or they have been great at some point in their lives. Dissing them simply because they do not connect with you, you little unique flower, is simply wrong. So, in a way, today I am discussing two different forms of snobbery. One that praises the well-known and well-established, and the other that champions rarity and obscurity. Nevertheless, they are still snobs because both extremes rely on exclusivism, superiority, and dismissing the others, the people who supposedly don't get it. But that's not why we are here for. We are here to highlight wines and the people behind them, whether that is a famous name or small, family-run business. And just for the fun of it, I have decided to blind taste two labels from Rhone. One comes from a well-established producer from prestigious and highly regarded appellation and is a staple in many wine collectors' cellars, and naturally fetches a high price tag. The other comes from a large appellation in Rhone, often called by critics as a lesser or more variable in quality. It is made by a tiny but very passionate producer who I happen to love dearly and think is doing an amazing work. Let's taste. All right, I have here one so-called trophy wine and one so-called insider's pick. And as usual, these wines were poured by my cameraman, so I don't know which one is which. So let's start with wine number 1. One of these days, I will start with wine number 2 or 3. We will go backwards. Okay, so wine number 1, we have this really deep ruby color, almost blackish. And we do have the same intensity on the nose, like you have these really ripe black and blueberries, black cherries, plums, but like blackberry. I would kind of expect that these wines more or less have seen oak, knowing the labels, both of them. But this is just packed with fruits, so dense and concentrated with these really ripe, opulent, dark fruit flavors. Maybe there is some spiciness in the background, you know, some vanilla, some clove, something playful, but definitely not overpowering in any capacity, the fruit here. The fruit is what shines. We do like that. Let's taste it. You kind of feel that there's going to be a lot of power and a lot of structure, so I want to feel it on the palate. This is really interesting on the palate. On the nose, this wine was screaming power. It was just so intense and concentrated. On the palate, the very first sip that I took, it was filled with a lot of freshness, lively, beautiful acidity. It is not zesty acidity, it is just lively and vibrant. And it adds this wine great energy. However, that acidity, even though it is still present on the palate and I do feel the freshness, but that acidity with time opens the room for all that concentration that we were talking about on the nose, all that fruit flavors, all that voluptuous texture. Let's taste that again. Some hint of jaminess just appeared. Something crushed and something also like Earl Grey-like or maybe like leafy. This is what you feel like. You have that very first impression of freshness and almost like lightness, but then it's like a shadow appeared and you think it's going to be, you know, one way, and then, you know, the real wine enters the room and you see all that structure and power and lusciousness. I do enjoy this wine. This is the reason why I love Syrah so much. It can be so powerful and rich, at the same time retaining that beautiful freshness and energy. And this wine represents that greatly. I do think there's a lot of stories to be told yet with this wine. I think it is just still very nervy, and maybe with some time it would calm down and maybe start to develop some tertiary notes and leave a bit more complex palate and nose. But for this moment, I will give this wine 94 points. I do enjoy it a lot. So let's move to wine number 2. Okay. So even though I do feel the same ripe berries, blackberries, blueberries, black plums here as well, here the berries seem much riper. They seem almost overripe, but not overripe jammy or cooked, just overripe on the bush. Like you have been wanting to harvest them for, you know, few days now, but you completely forgot or you have other things to do. Like, you know, they're starting to drop. But there's also some earthiness to it, like autumn leaves and forest floor. There's maybe like turned black earth. Something earthy there's also here in this glass, which adds to the complexity of the wine. It's like something fresh also peeked through. I told you about these really ripe berries, but it felt like there was like peeking some, red sour cherries outside of the glass. So interesting. Quite complex and evolving, constantly evolving. Yes, quite complex and evolving. Some like tobacco or like cigar box. It is so complex. And I know these wines, they're not that old. So this complexity in the wine number 2 is really stunning. I could just spend a lot of time talking about this wine's aromas, but let's taste it. There's a lot of spiciness. All those ripe blueberries, blackberries that I mentioned on the nose, they're really spicy here on the palate. And oh my God, the aftertaste, it is just lingering and staying on the palate. It is not tannin, it is not acidity, it is not alcohol that I feel on the aftertaste. I'm talking with you and I still feel the flavors of the berries, those spiced berries, probably, mixed and cooked in this crumble. It is just so beautiful. And I kind of feel the power and structure here in this wine as well. And it feels really ripe. It almost sweet, ripe, fruit driven and shaped. But the alcohol, it's there, but it's just beautifully wrapped with all the fruit. The tannin here is really ripe. Like in wine number 1, the tannin was slightly grippier, maybe a bit rustic, but still beautifully done. Here, the tannin is just like velvet. You feel it, but it's just ripe and part of the fruit. It is not outside of it. I want to taste it again. Now it just smells of smoked meat. Like brisket or something. So fun. This wine is absolute beauty. And I was talking about the tannins, and now with the second sip, they felt a bit more firmer, like adding a bit of structure, like a backbone to the wine. I enjoyed this wine a lot. I will give it 97.5. I was thinking about 98, but then I thought, I don't know, 97.5 with potential to be 98. I think it is beautiful wine. I still feel the aftertaste now. Shall we reveal the wines? Let's start with wine number 1, the lowest scored wine, 94 points. I would love to drink it. The freshness was amazing. This is the Insider's pick. So this is 2017 vintage Pierre Gonon, Saint-Joseph, and they are probably the coolest winemakers in the appellation. I had my pleasure to visit them, and the energy they had, it was just passed down to me, and it is passed down to their wines. I enjoy it a lot. And for those of you who read that Saint-Joseph is this large appellation with the really not that good quality, don't listen to them. Just dig a bit deeper. They are actually located in the area which was the original Saint-Joseph appellation. I don't remember in which year, but after a while there were other, I think 20 more communes added to the appellation, so it was enlarged. And now of course you have all these various quality wines, but Pierre Gonon, they still have their wines on these really steep slopes, and it takes a lot to tend those wines, to work with them, and their input really translates into the wines. I love their labels. So this was my Insider's pick. This leaves us with this really big, opulent, crazy wine, the trophy wine, having the highest score. This is the very first time I have tasted the wine, and I did it in blind. So it is Guigal, Cote, Mouline. And it is one of their famous Lala wines. So I think they had 3, La Turque, La Landon, La Mouline. And I think they're launching, or there have been launched another La wine. I really don't remember its name. But when we talk about Cote, it is one of the smallest, if not the smallest appellation in northern Rhone. So as opposed to Saint-Joseph, which is probably one of the biggest appellations in northern Rhone, it is really steep. So similarly, as with Pierre Gonon, Saint-Joseph wines, not all the wines of Saint-Joseph, it is really difficult to tend them. So naturally, these wines the starting point is really high price. But historically, the winemaking of northern Rhone was usually more or less using whole bunch, using old wood barrels for aging, and Guigal was one of the first ones to change that. So they started to age their wines in new oak barrels for a really long time. This specifically has been aged for 42 months, and majority of their wines are destemmed. And some argue that because of that, they got really popular amongst wine critics, including Robert Parker, who gave a lot of 100 points to a lot of their vintages. And I kind of understand why. It is a style that is really easily to be loved. This one maybe requires a bit of conversation, communicating with the wine, and this is just out there offering all these flavors, and it was really complex for such a young age. This is 2018, and I think it could live definitely for another 10 or 20 years. So one thing that I did not mention, this is coming from Liodie. Yes, we do have Liodie outside of Burgundy for those who wrote me some comments. And this is Cote Blanc. So a bit lighter soil in color, known to produce a bit more approachable wines, more elegant wines in their youth, as opposed to one of the other famous wines from Guigal, La Landon, which is called Rhone, making a bit more structured, full-bodied wines often associated with longer aging. So 97.5, 94, price difference 300 to 400 around $100, $150. I don't know about this producer, but I know that they do release it really affordable. It is the secondary market where this wine gains the highest prices. Here, I think that the winemaker knows exactly how expensive their wine is and release it accordingly. I told you that my aim of this video, Trophy Wine versus Insider's Pick, was not to critique anyone. I just wanted to show you that, in my opinion, these wines can be great in both worlds. And sometimes I do think that we are missing out a lot. We are really missing, if we are only tasting those highly critiqued wines, those really famous trophy labels, then we are missing out of these really small gems and these communications with beautiful, passionate winemakers for much better value, by the way. And if we are only supporting these small producers, we are actually missing out of these legends, people who actually shaped the winemaking, because believe me, so many people started to replicate this style that Guigal was making. Not always with greatest success, because you really have to know what you're doing. But because of Guigal, Cote was put on the map and people started to talk about it. Saint-Joseph, people do not talk about it enough. But maybe today this is Insider's Pick, but in 10 years it will be this well-known luxury label that everyone just will want to take photos with. So yes, let's continue our journey in wine. Let's continue to discover. Let me know what you think about this topic in the comment section below. And please, if you do not mind, share your insider's pick of some region that you love. If, however, you clicked on this video because of 100-point wine, make sure to watch my other video where I tasted 2 100-point wines against each other in blind.